This is Rob Tubbett for ID Boxing. Delighted to be joined by Shane McGuigan. We're here in, well, not the sunny McGuigan's gym in Leighton. It's a little bit dreary outside, but warm inside. Shane, how are you?
Good, mate. Yeah, nice to see you down there. I mean, I've seen you just pushing jobs onto everyone these days, and it's like, you know, the Messiah's finally come down.
I wouldn't say pushing jobs onto everybody. I've been working behind the scenes, in the shadows, so to speak, which will all come to light very soon. But you're right, it has been a little bit of time since I've been down here. How you been keeping? As always, gym busy.
Yep, gym's booming. Got Adam and Hassan out this weekend on Sunday. And then the following week I've got Daniel out, and then there's a couple of weeks off, and then I've got Caroline and CBS and potentially Hassan out again. So busy times, mate, before Christmas.
Let's talk about Daniel Dubois, who, of course, we were here to speak to today ahead of his bout with Kevin Lerena on the Fury-Chisora 3 undercard. How is Big Dan? Been a little bit of time since I've seen him up close and personal. How's he getting on?
How did you think he looked?
He looked good. I think he's heavy-handed. He's an athletic man, quickening up the feet and getting him a bit fluid. I'm assuming is what you're going to be working on moving forward. How do you feel he's been developing?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's. I think he's looking good. You know, we've got some good rounds in this camp, like good sparring, and hopefully, you know, we get a few rounds to showcase his ability. You know, Kevin Lerena's a cruiserweight coming up, but you know, decent. You know, he's no pushover. He can be quite an awkward. Could be quite an awkward night, as you suggested earlier on today. So, you know, if we let him get into a rhythm and get his bobbing side to side and get him like, if he gets comfortable under fire with Daniel, then it could be quite a hard night. So we're going to have to work on ways to disrupt the rhythm and make sure that, you know, like, find the right shots to land in the southpaw. But, you know, I think it's all coming together, and I think we're going to have to speed him up for this fight because, as I said, he's boxing a cruiserweight. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does with his first southpaw with 10-ounce gloves on.
Worked with him for a couple of years now, there or thereabouts. You've had the fight over in New York. You had Bogdan Dino. You had, with respect to him, you know, when he won the world title against Trevor Bryan. Do you think this is the first live opponent, the first threatening opponent for Daniel in the time you've been working together?
I think, yeah. I mean, like Lerena knocked out Bogdan Dino, who's just beat Marius Wack as well. So he's got a couple of good wins on his record of late. Trevor Bryan hadn't really boxed anyone. Talked a fantastic game, as most Americans do, but you know, didn't have much off the back of the chat, really. So yeah, this is probably our hardest fight for sure, together. And also at southpaw, he's short. You know, so it's punching down. It's a different trajectory. He's quicker. You know, I think he's also had good preparation sparring Martin Okolie and stuff like that. So he's going to be well prepared, but so is Daniel.
Now, in the last few weeks, just mind the mic lead there. The last few weeks, we've seen Filip Hrgović, his name put forward as an IBF mandatory for Alexander Usyk. I spoke to Alex Krasiuk, who, of course, is the promoter for Alexander Usyk. He mentioned that the WBA rotation is first before the IBF. That is, of course, the WBA regular champion Daniel Dubois. How far away do you think he is from competing with your Usyks, your top-end heavyweights?
Yeah, look, I mean, like, there's a reason we boxed a southpaw in this fight, and a sort of smaller, faster one as well. You know, we need that preparation. You can't go into boxing Alexander Usyk with no preparation. So that means that we obviously know that if the phone call comes about, then we'll take it. You know, he has to take those fights at this stage. You know, he's 25. It's very young for a heavyweight, but he's been a heavyweight for quite a long time. So he's got the experience. And hopefully we get decent amount of rounds out of this fight, so we can, you know, if the Usyk fight comes up or if another big fight comes up, then we're going to take it, because I believe it's now time for, you know, he's had a lot of learning in terms of in the gym. Like, we need 1 or 2 acid tests. Hopefully this is a decent enough acid test where he's got to engage his brain. He's got to think about his attacks. He's got to vary up the power. He can't just go thumping for you know, straight in and just fight without processing it. But I think, you know, when he's in there with someone that's going to cause these problems, then he'll have to adjust, and he will adjust. So that's what he's been doing in sparring. So hopefully, if we get this as a decent enough acid test, then we get maybe 1 more, and then we're ready for the big boys. But I said it in other interviews. I really believe that in terms of Daniel's style, you know, Joe Joyce is probably the hardest fight out there for his style, and he's already boxed him. So, and I believe that if he boxes him again with a little bit more experience, I think, I believe he can win. So, and if that's one of our hardest challenges and we can overcome it, I believe you've got to believe he can beat anyone in the world, and I think he hits anyone clean. If he sticks to the right tactics, he can.
You mentioned kind of a big fight next. Now, one of the names that kind of was immediately out of your mouth after the Trevor Bryan fight was Dillian Whyte. He's boxing Jermaine Franklin, somebody that you've had in the gym with Daniel Dubois over the last couple of weeks. A bit of an unknown quantity, I think, Jermaine Franklin going into that fight with Dillian Whyte this weekend. What did you see from him in the gym, and what are you expecting on fight night?
He's tough. Yeah, he's tough. He's not got an excelling trait. Like, he doesn't have crazy hand speed. He doesn't have very good head movement. He's not got very good feet, but he's a decent all-rounder. Like, he's good under fire, he's good under pressure, and he's quite well schooled. Will it be enough to beat Dillian Whyte? Not too sure, but he should give him rounds. I mean, look, it's one thing getting hit with 20-ounce gloves on and weathering a shot then, and then when the 10s are on, it's different. But Dan hit him some good shots, and he holds a decent shot. So I don't think he's got a chance to win it on points. I think Dillian will be far too busy for that. But I think Dillian will come out victorious. But I don't think it will be a complete walkover job. Like, I think he'll take a few rounds to break him down, I think.
Sticking with the heavyweights, Daniel is, of course, returning on the Fury-Chisora 3 undercard. Come up for a lot of criticism, that fight. We've, of course, seen it twice before. We all wanted to see Fury versus Usyk or Joshua or whoever it may be. What do you make of that fight? I mean, we've seen it twice before. Do you have any interest in seeing it a third time? Will you be hanging around after Daniel Dubois hopefully gets his victory?
I don't think I'll be hanging around, but that's no disrespect to them. I just don't really hang around anyway, because most of the ringside seats are taken, and I can't be bothered to watch it from a dugout. Chisora's 2-1 pace to cause problems for Tyson Fury, but he's tough enough to give him rounds. So I think it will be. You're always going to get a reasonably exciting fight with Derek, because he's going to be winging from his boots, and he goes out on his shield and he throws punches. When he's under attack, he just lets his hands go. So it won't be a boring fight, but I just don't think it's going to be a competitive fight.
I've not spoken to you on camera, at least, since Usyk-Joshua 2. You mentioned Alexander Usyk there, and having more than one eye on him as a potential opponent for Daniel Dubois. That Fury fight looks as though, even with kind of IBF orders and governing body politics, it looks as though it could happen first quarter of next year. How do you see that fight going? Did anything in the Joshua rematch? Yeah,
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, AJ didn't use his physicality against Usyk. If you look at like Chisora, he gave Usyk a lot of problems with just this pure size and physicality. And I think someone like Fury is a master at that. He's a master at leaning on someone. You saw what he did to Deontay Wilder. Some of the best stuff he did was just sapping his strength and just his energy, just from leaning on him, tying him up, and just big man in him. But Usyk is a classy operator. So of course I'd be interested in watching that fight. I think it'd be a great fight. It won't be as clean action as it would with the AJ and Usyk fight, but AJ just got outsped. He got outsped and out frustrated, and I think Usyk would do that to Tyson Fury as well. He's too quick for him, but I think Fury will use different tactics to slow it down. I mean, like if Chisora could just maul him, Fury's faster than Chisora. He's a better fighter than Chisora. I think it's he would have to use his physicality, but it's still definitely a good fight. I'd love to see it.
Final one on the heavyweight division before we move on. You mentioned Anthony Joshua. He came out recently and said that he's not going to box before the end of the year, which I think was kind of expected. Going to take a bit of a break and come back next year. Now, we've spoken quite openly in the past about Anthony Joshua on camera and whether it's necessarily the right tactics here, whether he's got the right training set up there. What do you make of where he's at now? And do you think that's the right thing for him to do, to kind of come back next year? And I know there's been talk of Otto Wallin, there's been talk about Dillian Whyte, who we've obviously mentioned. What do you make of Anthony Joshua's period of his career that he's got coming up?
I think it's a really exciting period for him because I feel like the pressure's off him. The pressure's been on him since the start. You know, he turned pro, Olympic gold medalist. He flew through the rankings. I think he won world title in his 16th fight against Charles Martin, and then he always said, "Oh, you know, I feel like I'm still a novice. I feel like I'm still learning the game," and he's just been in fight after fight that has been decent opposition. You know, he's the one that's boxed Usyk and the guys that are the banana skins. Do you know what I mean? So he's been fighting very good opposition. I feel like now it's the time that he can almost take a step back and just not ease back in, because everyone isn't going to want to watch him box nobodies, but I'd be like, Dillian Whyte would be a great fight for him. Rylan potentially as well. If he stops Rylan, that's a decent statement, because he gave Tyson Fury a hard fight. But I think like it would probably be a best time in his career for him to build up his confidence, because he had to avenge that Ruiz loss with the rematch. He had to go straight in with it, and the same thing with Usyk. Like, he couldn't obviously take 2 or 3 fights in between, or you just lose your immediate rematch clause. So he had to try and avenge the loss again with Usyk. So that whole time is, you know, you're preparing for a specific style. There's a lot of pressure on the loss, and then you've got to try and overcome it. And obviously he did with Ruiz, but he didn't with Usyk. But now it's almost like pressure's off him. He can go and get back to winning ways, get into fights that are more in his favour, but also still tests, you know. And there's plenty of people out there for him to box. There's the heavyweight division's the best it's been in the last 20 years since the Holyfield and Tyson and Lewis era. So, you know, in terms of the depth, like, you've got Ruiz, you've got Wilder, you've got Hrgović, you've got Joyce, you've got Parker's obviously just lost, but, you know, Dillian Whyte, AJ, you've got Dan, you've got like loads of great fights out there. So I'm sure he could mix it with lots of people.
Moving away from the big men and onto the small men, where I can say it now because he's gone, but Adam Azim and of course Hassan return this Sunday. Bit of Sunday boxing. Have your roast dinner at home and watch a bit of boxing. We'll start with Adam, of course, boxing Rylan Charlton at top of the bill. Any extra pressure headlining for the first time? It's quite a good slot as well. You don't imagine there's, well, I don't know, with the World Cup and stuff, but looking forward to Adam taking that test?
Definitely. I mean, like, he's a guy that thrives under pressure. He loves it. Like, he absolutely loves the, you know, not saying he loves the attention and stuff, but he likes the lights. He likes to sort of, there's certain people that love it in the gym and they like working behind closed doors, and they get a little bit spooked when it comes out to fight night, and it takes a bit more time to sort of build that confidence. But he has so much confidence and belief in himself, and I feel like he's a headline fighter right now, and that's why we've pushed it. You know, obviously it's not a full headline. There's a couple of really good fights on the card. Obviously Dion June was pulled out, but there was a couple of really decent tests. There's got Sam Gilly on the card as well, so, and Hassan and stuff like that. So it's a smaller sort of next gen-y sort of show, but it's also one that he's going to be going on last, which is not a test in itself. I mean, the test is with Rylan Charlton. It's a decent fight. Rylan Charlton, if he'd have boxed Dillian Chima over 10 rounds, he would have won, I believe. He got outpointed by Luke Willis. He hurt him in the last round, or the 8th or 9th, I think it was. So hurt him late on in the fight. And then obviously gave a good account of himself with Florian Marku. So he's no slouch. He comes to win, and he can punch. So that in itself is a big test for, you know, his 7th fight.
Exciting times for Adam Azim. Of course, recently we saw the announcement of his new long-term deal with Sky Sports and Boxer. Exciting times for Adam.
Yeah, Jake, my brother, well, we obviously manage Adam, and we've worked tirelessly to get this deal over the line, and it basically just gives us security, and it gives them security. And I think it's a great deal. It's a great partnership to move forward. It's great eyeballs. They're going to push him, and that's what we want. You know, we want someone to push him as being a star, because 2 years down the line, I believe he will be. I think he'll be fighting for world titles, and just got that X factor. Something about him that just, when he trains, when he starts sparring and stuff, people stop and watch, and I get a chance to see it day in, day out, and I'm excited for people to see how special that kid is in terms of his talent. It's so deep, his talent.
Now, one of the fights that people have been speaking about, you know what boxing's like. As soon as you get a couple of fighters in the same division, everyone wants to talk about a potential fight. Dalton Smith. Now, the first time that you would have had both of them in the gym was a few years back now, or it was a few pounds ago for me, with Dalton Smith and Adam Azim coming in to spar Luke Campbell for Ryan Garcia. First question, I guess, is kind of what do you make of that fight happening potentially down the line? Could you have expected back then, you know, that fight potentially happening down the line? And how good is Dalton Smith in your opinion?
Dalton's a very good fighter. I really like him. I think he's a nice guy as well. He carries himself well. He boxes really intelligently. Real sharp shooter. Got good base. Got good. I've been waiting to do that the whole time. Good base. Good punch selection. You know, you can see he watches a lot of Canelo. I think he's got a dog called Canelo. So. Yeah, he's got a good boxing brain on him, and that's a fight that's going to be building for a couple of years. You don't get many good dance partners in the UK, and people that are, you know, that are your weight, and you can sort of build it up as a sort of pay-per-view fight. And I think he's the one that in time, you know, we're going to work towards getting that as a pay-per-view, and it's going to be beneficial for both of them, and I'm excited about it.
You mentioned there about kind of building a domestic fight. Of course, the big example that you've been involved with on that scale is Scott Quigg versus Carl Frampton. Explain to me, if you can, kind of the mechanics of building a fight like that over a period of time. How does it come together? Is there kind of communication between camps and all parties that, okay, this is when we're going to do it? What goes behind building a rivalry like that?
Not having the same promoter, having two different promoters, and having two different platforms. Obviously, Sky would like them to probably to be on the same platform, but actually it's good in its own right that he's with Eddie and he's with another platform, and they can talk it up as much as they want, and we can talk up Adam as much as we want, and then hopefully in a year or two's time it's the right timing. You know, Scott Quigg and Carl Frampton were supposed to box for a British title, and they would have got paid like so much less, do you know what I mean? And thankfully for themselves, they both went on to win world titles, and it became a unification fight. And that's obviously where we would want to get it with Dalton and Adam. You know, it's not a fight to be had at British level. It's a fight to be had at world level. And a bit like, say, you know, like AJ and Fury would have been terrible for a British title. It would have been much better. I mean, AJ and Dillian was a British title fight. They both went on to achieve higher things, but you know, it takes time, and I think especially heavyweights is a bit different. But with the lighter weights, it takes a bit more time to get people behind you. And I think once you win a European, just like you're still nearly there, and then when you win a world title, people really sit back and sort of appreciate it, and you can become a star. And I think at that fight, they're both on star potential, and hopefully we can get it down the line.
Before we move on, Hassan, I saw him today. Hassan Azim, of course, returns as well on Sunday. How's Hassan getting on the gym? It feels like every time we speak, it's always kind of the same type of question with him, where everybody's talking about Adam and what Adam's going to do, and gives Hassan that opportunity to kind of work away in the shadows and develop without necessarily having the same amount of scrutiny that Adam has. Yeah,
I mean, it could discourage someone that's in that position, because you could think, why aren't people talking about me? But you can look at it from two sides, say, all right, well, the pressure's off me a little bit here. I can work in as you said, in the shadows and perfect this craft and you know, improve bit by bit. But being Adam's brother, there's also going to be eyeballs on him, and there's going to be a constant comparison. So he's doing well. He's doing well. He's had some really good sparring. He's been sparring like Sam Gilly. He sparred George Mitchell as well, another kid who's a middleweight / super middleweight. He's going to be boxing on the card as well. So he's had good rounds, and they're rounds with bigger guys as well. So he's going to be doing welterweight, and they're both like, well, one's a light middleweight and the other one's a middle, potentially super middle. So he's mixing it with good fighters that are bigger than him, and I think, you know, he needs more discipline when it comes to his boxing. He needs more, like, sometimes he lets his brain go away with him. In that last fight, you know, he hurt the guy with a decent shot in the first 40 seconds, and he threw everything at him, and that's a lesson that he needed to learn. Unfortunately, he's learning it on a Sky Sports show, so yeah, it'd be easy to scrutinise it, but he needs to just understand that this isn't a sprint. It's a longer sort of fight, because he's going to be going to 8-rounders soon, and we're going to be up in the opposition as well. So when guys can hold a shot, they're coming back. But he's got fantastic fitness. He just needs to know his body, and sometimes that takes time. You know, if you'd have got a 21-year-old or just turned 22-year-old Chris Billam-Smith in the gym, he wouldn't have a clue what he was doing. You know, he's 32 years of age, and he now knows his body, when he needs to push, when he doesn't. Like, when he has hard days, he's off on the other days. Like, when you're a kid, you're just enthusiastic, and you're just raring to go every day in the gym, and sometimes you can burn out a little bit. So it's the older he gets, the more he's going to understand that, you know, he's got his own path, and he has to learn his body, you know, and learn the right way to fight. Sometimes he's just a little bit too brave for his own good.
You mentioned Chris Billam-Smith there, of course, former British and European cruiserweight champion. As he's just shot out the back there, we can talk about him without him eavesdropping. He's back in the ring, December the 17th, returns to Bournemouth against Xhoxhaj. I'll let you do the pronunciation of the opponent. Yeah, against Kosovan German guy. Oh no, he's back here, so we'll have to be nice. But yeah, Chris back in Bournemouth after a brilliant fight against Isaac Chamberlain. I'm sure that's something that he's very excited to do, to return to Bournemouth before Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of them, wasn't it? I mean, we could have sat out and waited for Xhoxhaj to get his jaw healed and then go early-ish next year, or we keep him active, and we don't want to be in fights. Like, he's worked so hard to get into the position that he's in right now to fight for a world title, and you know, he's won a British title, he's won the Commonwealth title, he's won the European title, WBA, Intercontinental. He's won those belts, and now it's like the next step is to fight for a world title. And you know, where he is in the rankings, he's so highly ranked in the WBA, he's highly ranked in the WBO. Lawrence obviously got that belt. Then we've got the IBF, which is Xhoxhaj, and then you got Makabu, who's everyone knows because of Tony Bellew. But Makabu's got Don King behind him, and he thinks he's like worth millions and millions and millions of pounds. So that's going to be unlikely to get him to come to Bournemouth, to either the BIC or the outside stadium. And I think the most reliable source will be going for Xhoxhaj. And you know, we've worked so hard to get a world title fight. We need to make sure that we get this one over the line, and then we go early-ish next year for world honours.
Richard Riakporhe's name was bandied about again. I saw Chris do an interview with Sky, and Richard kind of have his two penneth worth over a potential rematch that was offered, accepted, or whatever you want to call it, for December the 17th. What's your recollection of that situation?
Yeah, once again, look, we do the negotiations for Chris, and the fact is that we wanted that fight. We were happy to do it on December the 17th. We didn't get word back. There was a lot of back and forth. We agreed from our side, and we said, and then we spoke to Ben Shlom and he said, "Oh well, Richard hasn't agreed," and I think he didn't like the idea of coming to Bournemouth. I think he was preparing for a southpaw, preparing for Glavoksky, and obviously a change of opponent, and also the fact of going down to Bournemouth. I mean, Chris boxed him on the Dillian Whyte versus Oscar Rivas card, which Dillian Whyte managed Riakporhe in London, in his hometown. So we would have thought that he would have honoured that and come down to Bournemouth, but he didn't want it under those terms. I'm not saying he didn't want the fight, I'm saying he didn't want it under those terms, so it got broken down in negotiations. But we'll go on December 17th, and then we'll fight for a world title.
If the world title shot's not available for either Chris or Richard, of course Richard well ranked with the WBC in particular, chasing that world title fight, could we potentially see that without a world title on the line, or is that something that would have to have some sort of hardware on the line? Potentially.
It all boils down to money, and also what's on the risk versus reward. I mean, like, I feel like now that we've gotten to the position that we're in, we've got to fight for a world title, and Richard Riakporhe doesn't hold one. And he's not going to box Xhoxhaj. He doesn't want to box him. He wants to box the easier opponent in Makabu. So, and he doesn't want to box Gulamarian or Lawrence. So, I'm not sure if if he wins a world title, then of course. But if he doesn't, then I'm not too sure if we're going to make it, because, you know, for Chris, it's not necessarily about the money. It's more about achievements, and you know, he's worked so hard to get into this position. You know, when turning pro without much of a depth of amateur experience, not being on GB. You know, we signed him from sparring George. I signed him from sparring George Groves, you know, and sparring David Haye, and I saw an enthusiastic guy that was willing to learn, and you know, we thought, let's set some goals here. Let's get to British level, surpassed it. Let's get to Commonwealth level, surpassed it. Let's get to British level, surpassed it. Let's get to European. Let's move on. And we've ticked all the boxes so far. Yes, we've had a split decision setback against, you know, Richard Riakporhe, but you know, he's rebuilt and regained himself, like, confidence and gone on. So for now, it's about fighting for a world title. And like, if you just said that when we started, you know, you're going to be fighting for a world title, we'd have both been extremely happy about that. And now let's go out there and win it.
We mentioned his name, Lawrence Okolie, WBO cruiserweight champion, former fighter of yours. Haven't spoken to you since. I mean, it kind of came out. I mean, what's the situation there, I guess, is probably the question.
Well, look, myself and Lawrence is, you know, we're not on bad terms. He's not active in the gym. He's living in Dubai at the moment, and he wants to do abroad training camps. And for me, I've so many fighters in here: Dan Dubois, Caroline, the Azims, Chris, Ellie, Robbie. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I've missed anyone, but Fowler as well. You know, I don't have time to go away for 6 weeks. I can't do that. And it still remains to be seen where he's going to be basing himself. But he's got some things that he needs to sort out, and until he does, I don't think we're gonna be chatting about a training camp, basically. So we're not on bad terms or anything like that, and it's a little bit frustrating for him because he's just getting good momentum. Obviously, he didn't have a great performance against Cieslak, but he had an injured knee in that fight, and you know, he still came through though. He reverted back to a bit of old ways when it came to, like, you know, clenching and trying to slow the pace down and smothering his work, but he still got the win. He's still a world champion. So it's just, you know, I wish the best for him in terms of, like, if we don't work together in the future, then I wish the best for him, and if we do, then I still believe he can do a lot. You know, I think he can achieve great things. He's got so much talent.
So the door's still open, but obviously, I mean, Lawrence has some things to work out promotionally, and of course where he wants to situate himself and where he wants to box. But there could be a scenario whereby he does return to the gym and you would train him in the future. Yeah,
definitely. That's always an option. It's just logistically, it just has to make sense for not just him, also for me.
Okay, well, Shane, before I let you go, we've run over a little bit today, so I can't run through the whole stable as I would usually do, but let's talk quickly before I shoot off about Caroline Dubois and, of course, Ellie Scotney, who is going to be boxing Charnika Johnson for the IBF world title. Women's boxing thriving at the minute, and it seems like you've got hold of a couple of good ones there, admittedly at different stages of their careers, but exciting times for the girls at McGuigan's gym. Definitely.
I mean, Ellie's obviously got the chance to fight for the IBF world title. Hopefully we can come to an agreement. We can get Charnika Johnson over here in early February, maybe just February in general. Like, that'd be a great. Hopefully Eddie can find a card to bring her over, and it's not an easy fight. You know, she's busy. She's tough. She's strong. So it's one that I think Ellie can definitely win. But you know, we're gonna have to have proper good preparation for it. But exciting times, really, really exciting times. And obviously Caroline just come off a fifth round knockout win of a really tough girl. It's obviously gone 8 rounds with Katie Taylor. She's gone rounds with Hamadouche. Obviously she got stopped in the second fight quite early in that one, but it's a tough girl, and like Caroline broke her down, hurt her to the head, and then ended up finishing her with a body shot. So I feel like it's starting to click with Caroline. It really is. It's she's been in the gym since the Olympics. She did a little bit before it, but she's been in the gym since the Olympics, and You know, we're 4 fights on now, 3 knockouts. The first fight was a little bit rushed; it wasn't settled. You know, sometimes that's always the case with your first fight. You build up this level of expectation, what you want to do, and it just doesn't go to plan. But you know, we're going to maybe have one more 6-rounder and then crack on. But obviously, the lightweight division where we're going to sort of cement her place is a stacked division. It's got a lot of depth there. Katie Taylor's holds all of the belts. But it's a great weight that you can go potentially up to 140, where you've got Chantel's just become undisputed. You've got Sandy Ryan up there. You've got, even going down, you've got the likes of Amanda Serrano that's been up as high as 135 as well. So there's a couple of great names that we could potentially get down the line. Michaela Mayers as well, about to step up to 135. You got Alicia Baumgarten as well. Potentially, I think she might be moving up. Obviously, she wants to become undisputed, but we're starting to get a lot of depth in and around that. Look, that division's always been the most stacked division, but there's also going to be names there. Like, if you look at the super bantamweight division for Ellie, you know, you've got Bridges, you've got Shannon as well. That's the weight below, but there's not a lot of marketable fights out there for us. We might have to step up to featherweight in the future to get more exposure.
And last but by no means least, Robbie Davies Jr. not here in the gym today. I know he's had quite a frustrating year. He's had some opportunities that he wasn't able to kind of grasp, I suppose. I know one of the names that was discussed recently was Montana Love, who, by the way, we saw in a WWE audition a couple of weeks ago against Stevie Spark. Don't know what was going on there, but we don't have time for that. How is Robbie Davies? When can we expect to see him return into the ring?
Yeah, he's been in the gym for a good few weeks now, and then he's taken last week off, and he's going to come probably down the end of this week, and just ticking over really, because there was going to be a show. It's frustrating because we were going to get him on October the 29th show, and then there was word that there was going to be a show in Liverpool in end of November, December, and then that's been pushed back. So we're now looking at he's got another fight in his contract with Matchroom, and we just want to get a decent card where he can. It doesn't have to be at home, but it can be relatively close to Liverpool, so we can get him to sell tickets and really get him pumped up for it and get the right opponent. Obviously, we would have travelled out to box Montana Love, but I think it all comes down to, you know, DAZN having a budget, and I think they have to pay Montana Love an extreme amount of money, and Sparks was probably quite cheap. And obviously it turned out wrong for him. But for instance, that's a great fight for us. We'd like that fight, Sparks. So, you know, we'd probably even travel to Australia to get that one. It's just at this stage of his career, we need to get him decent names. We don't want to just, you know, he's past the level of like the Casey Benjamins and all of that. Like that, he's won the British, Commonwealth, and European title. You know, I wanted to fight for a version of a world title, or even a world title eliminator in his next fight. You know, we looked at the IBO champion, the guy that stopped Sam Maxwell, and we would put that towards Eddie. And I think they were potentially looking to get that fight out, but they just didn't have the right date. So it's a frustrating time. Sorry.
Okay, well, I think we're about there. Been a while, but always a pleasure catching up and coming down to see the guys work at McGuigan's gym. So thanks very much for speaking to ID Boxing, and I'm sure I will catch up with you soon.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks as always for coming down, giving us this amazing exposure and this in-depth chat.
You're very welcome, Shane.